we're going to tackle a topic that's much too big for a single segment now. And so this is just the first on something that we call character development. And my good friend Kent Kruger has got some things to say about this.
I'm going to start by saying some things other people much smarter than I have said. I'm going to start with a paraphrase of a quote by a woman named Ruth Cavan, who we all know. She's a legendary editor in the mystery business. And Ruth Cavan basically said, plot can always be fixed. Character you have to nail. And I'm going to quote one of our favorite homeboys, F. Scott Fitzgerald, who said, character is plot, and plot is character. So it's clear to those two people the importance of character in a story of fiction story. What do you guys think?
All right, I agree that it's important, and I agree that you do have to nail your character, because any mystery, well, no, I can think of a couple authors who don't have characters that could hold up any kind of a story, but they're plots that go 40 miles an hour and you don't really care, because in 20 minutes after you start the story, you read it, and you don't remember the characters, and it doesn't matter. But I think that you have to have both, and I think plot dictates some characteristics of character, but I think you can start with a character without any idea what the plot is going to be. I think, in fact, series people who have gone to the second, third, or fourth book have this character, and they've gradually developed this character to a certain point, and now they're looking for plots to go with that character.
That's a good point, Coral.
I thought so.
Yeah.
I think character is fundamental to all good writing, and I think Mary Higgins Clark used to say there were three important balls, if you will, that you had to keep up in the air if you're juggling. One was plot, one was character, and one was pace. And they're balls that you had to keep in the air, and if you dropped one, the book would fall flat. And I agree with that, but I do think, certainly for the kinds of books that I like to read, and in my own writing, that they're very what we call character-driven. And I think if your question is character important to a novel, I think if you were to query editors and agents, what was probably the one quality that made books fall flat in their eyes, it would be no depth of character.
Okay.
You touched on a good point when you talked about thrillers and the fact that thrillers, typically speaking, have fairly two-dimensional characters. But one of the things that you're very often talking about in terms of building suspense, and suspense is really the underlying machine that makes thrillers move, is the fact that in order for suspense to work, readers have to care about the people whom you put in danger.
So
and that goes back to character. You have to create real characters for them to be concerned about.
Something that a reader can identify with.
Well, and I think in a mystery novel, the main character in the mystery novel becomes the reader in the book. I mean, we are that person. We're
seeing everything through
that person.
We're experiencing it. Yeah.
Right. And
next question for you is, where do your characters come from? Do you pull characters out of people you know, real life? Do you create them? How do you do that?
Oh, well, my character, my detective, I can really only use one of those examples, is somebody that I knew in real life, largely, but not entirely. And
are we talking about your short PI?
We're talking about a short PI named Sean. Yeah, exactly. And his characteristics. I spent a lot of time, in a chair in various places like the Mall of America, because the perspective is different than it is for me, and I'm almost 6 feet tall, at least I was a few years ago. So that I think that kind of empathy, that kind of identification is, by the author, is necessary, because then without it, the reader isn't going to have that. So I think that's another area that you have to take care of. But let me say one more thing about that, and that is that you have to be careful about your character, because you have to live with that character, especially if you're going to write a series for a long time. And I think that, for me, I don't know everything there is to know about my main characters. I deliberately am learning things as I go along, because I think that keeps it fresh in my mind, which adds to the freshness of the writing.
You make up your characters? Do they come from people you know?
I think There's a lot of ways to look at that. I mean, I think Tennessee Williams said that he was born with these sets, with a set of characters in his mind, and he used them again and again and again. And I find myself using similar people in my life. There's one particular person that in virtually every book that I've ever written has been the paradigm for evil. I do think this business that you see in books, it's at the front of the book, it says, you know, this book has no bearing in reality and any, what, you know, and they might as well write and the earth is flat, because of course we go to our lives to find characters. We don't necessarily take the entire character, and if you do that, you might get sued. But you'll take an attitude here and a physical characteristic there, and a, you know, maybe a moral issue from a friend in your life.
We create Frankenstein characters,
Exactly, yeah.
that meet the needs of that
Absolutely.
particular story.
But don't we also create one of the problems in discussing character, and particularly in your class, it seems to me, is if you use certain examples. Let me use an example like Perry Mason. Earl Stanley Gardner never really described Perry Mason, but we think of him as a force in the courtroom, but he doesn't have any real human characteristics except as a litigator in that courtroom scene. Beyond that, except in the movies, he kind of fades into the background, don't you think?
Well, go ahead.
I think that your character, particularly your protagonist, becomes the window through which the entire world of the novel or your story is viewed. And it's less important to see that character physically than it is to be able to inhabit that character's mind. And so the perceptions and the motivations and the responses, all of those come out of that character. And when you know that, it really doesn't matter so much what the character looks like, because you create. Each reader creates what that character looks like in his or her mind.
Well, that's it. We're done with character, and we're
For
done with this program
session,
for this session anyway. There's a lot more information on our website, www.minnesotacrimewave.org, including, when we'll give you lists of these kinds of things and the books that we've been talking about. You'll find links to previous programs, and you can subscribe to our occasional newsletter. Thanks to all of you who have contacted us and who's working on this program. And remember, if you have more comments, do get in touch with us. Our email address is minnesotacrimewave@yahoo.com. So we'll see you next time. As always, read more mysteries.
Hear, hear.
Absolutely.